Hello, I'm Katherine Artines. Thanks for joining me for this video entitled Give Thanks Part 2. We began our project in the Give Thanks Part 1 video where we created this pumpkin block. We're going to continue to give thanks in our next two blocks. Yummy dessert, pumpkin pie. This is our next block in our table runner or wall hanging. I mentioned at the end of the Part 1 video that one of the little things I give thanks for is the number of tools within Perfect Embroidery Pro. It might seem a silly thing to say, but I don't think so. I love to explore my creative side, and any device or piece of equipment, or any of my numerous toys that lets me do that is important to me. One of the things that PEP offers us is the ability to use all of our software together. Take a look at the extreme right of your screen in PEP. This is called the software shortcut bar, and it will show you what other inspiration software you have installed and registered. These are the key words: installed and registered. The buttons for any software that is installed and registered will be bright and active. The unregistered software shortcuts will be grayed out. Should you purchase additional software in the future and install and register it, the buttons for the new software will become bright and active. One thing to remember about installing inspiration software: each package is a standalone software, meaning you don't have to have others for you to use it. I could use WordArt in Stitches or Vintage without owning Perfect Embroidery Pro. However, Perfect Embroidery Pro is the parent or root software. It should always be installed first on a new computer. Once installed and registered, open PEP to make sure it is active before you install any other inspiration software you have. If you do it in this order, you'll have access to the other software while in Perfect Embroidery Pro. Installation and registration are easy processes, but should you need help, contact the support desk. So, with all of that said, you can see that I'm very lucky, very thankful to have all of the inspiration software buttons active and available to me to use within Perfect Embroidery Pro. Now to begin our block. We have many places to get artwork to use in Perfect Embroidery Pro. I'm going to utilize the artwork that is in WordArt in Stitches. We'll come over here to these active buttons. The third one down is for the bubble text in WordArt. Clicking that, I'm brought into WordArt. Remember, I'm still in Perfect Embroidery Pro. In this dialog box, I can use the Eclipse button to go get a shape. We'll come into Holiday, down to Thanksgiving, and here's our piece of pie. If you played in WordArt before, you know that its great ability is to add text into a shape. In this case, I'm interested in just the artwork. So we'll see that the size is for an 8-inch hoop, which is fine. It is in artwork, which I'm going to leave, but I am going to remove any of the text by simply hitting my delete key on the keyboard. We'll go ahead and OK that, and the pie artwork is brought to screen. As we did in our first block in Part 1, let's do a show hoop. Come over here. I have my 200 by 200, which is my 8 by 8 hoop. I'll go ahead and OK that. I see the pie is just a little large. I'll come over here to the transform button and make that 4 inches high. Do an apply, and that gives about a 6.3 width. If ever I'm not sure where I'm going with a particular shape, maybe still in the playing stage, I would do a copy paste for this pie art. We did this in Part 1. Copy, paste. I'll drag that over out of the way. I'm going to add a few more colors here onto the screen as I begin to play. Selecting our first pie again, I'm going to come up here to the ungroup. As you saw in the picture, we're going to add text on path around this pie. I'm going to separate the pie crust from the pie itself. If we are doing this text on path, this crust is a little bit bumpy for any of the words to go around that. I'll come up to use my shape tool, right click on this particular button, come down here and do split line, and you see that it has divided that pie into two pieces. I'll select the crust, drag that up out of my way just a little bit. To add the text using the text tool, I'll click on the screen. The last font that was used was cursive. I'm going to go ahead and type in my phrase. I'm using all caps so that I can see the shape of the text better. Give thanks is my message. I'm going to use a space, a hyphen, and a space. Give thanks, space, hyphen, space. And I'm going to type this 4 times with that space, hyphen, space in between there. Ending with a space. And spell properly. Something else I'm going to do is come all the way to the beginning. I know that I want to put a space in there. If you've played with me before with text, you know by doing that, it allows us to move the entire length of the text should we need to. Some other things that I'm going to do, first of all, I want a different font. I'll click on that font window, scroll down towards the bottom where the mini fonts are. I am looking for the small font, the rounded small. Here's the one I want. I'll go ahead and OK that. I also know that I want the space to be 20. I'm going to space it out just a little bit, and the height is a 0.3. Go ahead and apply that, and you can see our text here. I'm going to turn on my 3D, select the phrase, hold down my Control key, select the pie, do a right click, and ask it for text on path. Again, I'll get my select key, and I see that that shape came in pretty well. There might be 1 or 2 things I want to fix here. I think I want the give to go around that corner. All I need to do is to come back to my text tool. I'll zoom in here so you can see a little bit better what we're doing. And with my text tool, I'm going to grab this blue triangle. You may remember that this allows me to scoot the text over, and I'm just going to have that G go right on the corner here. Maybe I would like to move this over just a bit now that I've seen what that looks like. I'll grab my blue line again and bring this down just a bit so that that G is just around the corner. Let me take a look if I'm happy with it. That looks nice. And if I scoot over, I can see that looks nice. Actually, I like the look of that very much. And the reason that fits so well is because I did play before doing this video for you, so you would have those proper measurements to get your text just around that pie. Now that I know everything went fine with my piece of pie, I am going to select my extra and delete that. We'll do a double click to put the pie in the center of the screen. I'll take my crust and move that down just a little bit. I can elongate it if I thought I needed it, but we'll play for a minute here and see what we end up with. I could leave it like that, or because I have artwork tools, I can add a few details. Let's come up here to our pen under artwork, and I'm going to draw, click and drag, and draw that dividing line between the crust and the pie itself. Let me select both of those. I'll hold down my Control key and choose my crust as well. A right click, convert to run. I'm going to come over to properties and make that a bean, and because I want that to stand out in all of the lettering, I'm going to use a 5 repeat and apply. Obviously, I can go in and change the color, so if I want to click on that first color and find something that would be more appropriate for my crust, I can do that. That looks good. We could play to see if we wanted this as an applique. To do that, I need some space in there for the applique pieces to rest. So let's go up to our artwork tool again. I'll choose my pen, and I'm going to simply draw a triangle in the shape of this pie. You can see that I'm giving it just a little bit of curve, trying to follow my letters so that it fits well. Once again, I'm going to do a C to close that line. And then I also want the pie bottom, so I'll click on that artwork tool again. Since I just used pen, it is still the one that is available to me. Make a little curve there for my bottom. Give this just a little bit of an up and then down to my pie piece, and I'll get a little closer and then use my C to close. If I want to do some editing, I can smooth those curves out or those points out. We'll right click and do a smooth. Maybe this is just a little bit too curly or round. All right, at this point again I could play however much I wanted to smooth out some of those points again. This is what is very fun with our PEP. We can continue to play until we're happy with the piece. Let's see what this would look like as an applique. I will go ahead and choose my Crust, come up to the properties, go into Fabric, use my ellipse, and for my Crust I want something a little golden brown. For the bottom pie piece, once again into Properties, into Fabric, have a little orange of that going on. And I can see here if I like the look, I think what I'm going to do is move some of these points up just a little bit so I don't have so much white space in between there, and maybe bring my pie down here just a little bit for the bottom as well. All right, I like the look of that. And now if I decide I really want the crust itself to be an applique, all I need to do is right click, go back into my shape tool. I'm going to right click and edit just the outlines. So then I can pull that line here and rest it on the top, come over and apply it. Now I have a space in which I can select it and apply some fabric again into the ellipse, and I use that golden color for my pie crust. So I can see if I like the look of that. Now that pie crust might be a little too big for my pie at this point, so I might shrink it, I might rotate it just a little bit. I'm going to get it the exact way that I want it to look. And that's the fun of having PEP, is that you can play. So here we have our pie. These two pieces are still artwork. If I come over here and right click, I am going to convert those to a run and again make those a bean stitch and apply my 5 repeats. And there I now have all of the stitching that I need for my pie to stitch out as an applique. If I want to come down here to the bottom and change the color of that, I can do so. So this way all of my crust will be in one color and the pie itself in another. If I'd like to change the color of those words, I can come into my thread bar, click on that, and choose any color that I'd like if I want to give it more of a flavor of the pie. I actually had mine in a violet, so it stood out on my fabric. Again, you can do whatever it is that you'd like, and certainly whatever color we pick here for the thread, we don't have to stick to once we're at our machine stitching out. At this point, I would do a File, Save As. I'm in my proper folder for part 2, and I'm going to call this Pie. Do you remember in part 1 where we created our custom stipple? Let's do it again with our pie. And what does a piece of pie need? Well, certainly it needs a fork. Once again, I'm going to come over here to use my bubble text to utilize the software that I own. So we'll go ahead and click on that, back into the ellipse for the artwork. This time I'm going into Kitchen, so I'll expand it, click on Icons, scroll down a little bit, and I know that there is a spoon fork combination here, so we'll go ahead and OK that and bring it to screen. Now remember, I want to keep it that size. I need it as artwork, but I do not want any text for this one. I'll OK it, bring it to screen. Let me move it over a little bit here so that you can see what we're doing. I first need to come up here and do a break apart, and that will allow me to play with the individual pieces. I'll click on the spoon, hit the delete on my keyboard, delete on my keyboard to get rid of the background, and I will size this fork down. I'm going to make that fork about 1 inch high. We'll go ahead and apply it. I'll bring that fork over here to the corner. Do you remember how we did this in part 1? We're going to use this great tool up here called Scatter. You'll find it under Carousel under that drop down arrow. We click on Scatter. I'm going to leave it the 8 inch for my hoop, but I'm going to bring this as a 100 at the minimum, meaning it won't get any smaller than that, but I am going to bump this one up to a 175, so we'll get a little larger. 2, we're going to set the minimum distance as a 0.8. This is a little larger than we did before in our part 1. I'll do an apply, and you can see that I have a minimum number of forks, but this will be fine, and I could continue to do that until I found one that I thought I liked. So we'll go ahead and do it one more time, see if I can get some more big ones in there. That looks good. I'll do an OK, and it comes to screen. We're going to drag it into place and then come up here and do an ungroup, because each of those forks were grouped to the next one. At this point, you may remember that we just play. I'm going to grab the forks and position them the way that I think would be a fun stippling effect, and I can rotate them and position them wherever I'd like. Place them here and there. We don't want, you can have as many as you want, but for purposes for the video, I'm going to keep it simple and just use the number that I have here. Maybe rotate this guy so he feeds over, little pun intended, feeds over into this corner, and we'll rotate this and maybe rotate that. What I might want to do is swap out these two forks. Since this one is a little bigger, I can put it in that open space and bring this guy back here. So here we have our fork stipple. I have two that are in there I don't need, so I'll go ahead and click. I could bring that down though to see if I fill in that empty space a little bit. I kind of like that. But this one I don't need, so I'll go ahead and delete. So here is our stipple. What we need to do now is to put these in the order that I'm going to stitch. You may remember that I like to start at the top left and move around. And remember that these, if you take a look at the sequence view, these are not in the order. They're not going to stitch out in the order that I want them to, in the logical left to right or left around the circle. We'll click on that top fork. I'll come up here and ask it to move to front. Remember, it just went down to the last position. And I'll move around my circle, select my fork, do a move to front, the next one move to front, and so forth. I'm simply moving around my circle to allow me to place these forks in the order that I would like them to stitch out. And I can continue to do so. And I'm just going to go up to the last one, and there they are in this particular order. At this point, I'm going to do a file save as and just add the word stipple here so that if I ever need to come back, the pie with the stipple before I move on is at this position. Let's zoom in just a little bit here. Now I'm going to come up to artwork, grab my pen once again. I'm going to add a new color to screen. I'll click on that green, make it a little darker so that you can see that. I just want a different color so you can follow along with our line as we connect these forks into our stipple. So I'll get my pen. I'm going to right click on the green, and remember that the way we did this in part one is we simply came and connected our forks with a line. And here I'm going to do a bit of a loop-de-loop. Right click to end. I'll come off of this one and go down into this fork. Right click, come off the end of this, and maybe another little loop-de-loop. Remember, to do that loop-de-loop, we're just doing an oddball triangle. Or right click to end, come off the tip here, make a circle, right click, and this is a nice open space for another one of our loop-de-loops, and we'll come down here and give this some interest as a curve. And I'll come into the fork. I'll go onto that side, right click to end. I just need to scoot down just a little bit, come off the point here, and maybe come into a circle that allows me to go into the fork, come off this end, go up into the point of the fork here, right click to end, and this is an empty space. I can do another little loop-to-loop if I'd like. Come into the fork, right click, and then come off of this one. I like these little loops. I think that's what adds some interest to our stippling. And finally, coming off the end of here, I'm simply going to come up with a straight line, but I can break into my area, my big area right here. Come over, not to worry, I can fix those points when I'm finished. Let me scoot up. And sometimes that happens when you're drawing and you think you have an idea of where you want to go and it didn't come out just as you anticipated, so we can fix those points. Now we need to zoom in and make sure that each of our artwork lines actually touch our forks. So we're going to have to really zoom in here so that we can see those points. I'll choose my shape tool. First one I'll address is this one right here, making sure that it touches my line. Scooting over. Remember, we're not worried at this point about the points being so angular. We're going to come back and fix that, and I can drag these lines to wherever I think is appropriate here. Make sure that that one touches, and it does. Scoot over a little bit here. This one is awkward, so I might bring that one back up to that point. This one is not touching, so I need to bring it to the line itself. That one is touching. We'll scoot over, coming down, just to make sure. That one looks like it touches, but we want to make sure that it does. No gap in our stipple. We need this to look like a continuous line. So we'll bring in that point, move this point here. This really is very fun. I found it a bit addicting to make some different shapes. Take a look and see what artwork that you have to play with, and then how might you apply that to a project that you're using. Maybe I'll bring that point out just a little bit and make it touch a little lower. Here we can move that to the point and scroll over. Again, we need to make sure that these lines are touching, and it looks like we did a pretty good job this first time around. Most of them are touching. Didn't have too many that were floating out there. Some adjustments necessary, though. That's part of the fun. You're getting very good at using these tools, which I'm all about helping you do. Once you get more comfortable with these, you can do anything you want. And that's the beauty of Perfect Embroidery Pro, is that it gives us all of these tools in here to work with. All right, now here's the area that didn't come out quite as planned. So I might want to play with my points and bring those points over and make the loop-de-loop be a different angle. And did you see how I did that? I didn't have to fret that as I was drawing that, it didn't come out exactly as planned. So not a problem at all. This one looks like it's down just a hair too long. And then once again, let me check that first one that I did, and that looks good. We'll zoom back out. All of our lines are touching. Let's come over to Sequence View, do a right click, and ask to collapse all, so that I can select the forks, hold down my control key and select the green stipple line. Come up here to combine. I now have everything as one unit. I am going to put it back into green so you can see the difference a little easier. What we need to do now is go in and smooth out all of those points that we just added with our artwork. I'll go ahead and zoom in. Choose my shape tool. I'll do a click and drag to select the points. Right click smooth, right click smooth. Going to bring that out just a little bit. Do a right click smooth. Do a drag around these points. Right click smooth. Also want to get this little guy here, smooth. I'll do these others that I can see while I'm in this screen. Right click smooth, right click smooth on these. Remember, I can also hold down my control key to grab another one and do a right click smooth. I'll do the same for this guy here. Grab those two while I can see them and right click smooth. Scoot over a bit to grab these other points. Remember, I can also play with these lines now. Right click smooth, click and drag around those and smooth those out. I'll grab as many as I can see here and smooth those out. And once again, all of these wonderful tools that we have in PEP that allow us just to play. And isn't it great? Because as you continue to play, you're going to hone those skills that you have, and the more comfortable you are with the skills, the more comfortable you are in getting into the software and simply to create things as I create for you on these videos. They're not hard, they're fun, and you are utilizing your investment. We'll do a right click and smooth this guy out, and just a few more here on the side. Right click and smooth. We'll go ahead and zoom out, see what we have here. All of that looks good. I have one area right here that I see some lines going over each other, so let's zoom into that real quick, and I'll get my point, and I'm going to take this point and simply drag it there to the end and apply, and that's much better. So very real here. What we're doing is taking a quick peek around our stippling to see that we do like what we have. The last thing I now want to do is select it, convert it to a run. I am going to leave it as a standard. Again, I'm going to put that in green just so it stands out just a little bit. I like the look of that. And at this point, I would come in and do a file, save as. I'm in my proper folder. I'm going to call it Pie, but this time add the word stipple. So again, if at any point I want to come back into this design and tweak it a bit, I can do so. Looks good. And once again, ta-da, another custom stipple. We'll check the sequence order here. I want the stippling to stitch out first. It is selected. We'll come up here to our toolbar, and I'm going to ask it to move to back. I then have my pie. I will add my crust to the gold, and then I have one other line in there, and that's that demarcation line, that detail line that I put in there to separate the crust from the pie. I'm going to change that to be a different color. Just put that in as a more violet, just to separate. I can put whatever thread color I want as soon as I get to the fabric. But now I'm going to have that stitch out after the words, and my pie I'm going to bring up and stitch second. We'll take a look in the slow redraw. I have stippling, I have my pie, I have crust, I have the letters themselves, and then I have that detail line that goes against the pie. This looks pretty good, but I will say that I like a little dollop of whipped cream on my pie. So let's go into our art that we're given to see if we have something that will work. We're going to go into text designs, applique shape, and I happen to know that there is a perfect artwork piece. Right here, the moose, we'll okay it. Comes in as an applique. I'll slide that to the side so you can see it. If you prefer this whipped cream to be a true applique with the satin outline, all you would need to do would be to size it and place it on our pie, maybe a little smaller, and place that so we can still see our words. If I was going to leave this with a satin stitch, there are a couple of things over in properties that I would change, one of which would be change colors so that my placement line and tack down line are two different colors. I also would come over here to the applique density and make that a 0.3. That happens to be my choice. We'll go ahead and apply, and those two changes would take effect. However, the rest of this pie applique is raw edge applique. I'm going to make my whipped cream match that by doing a right click, convert to run. I'll come up here, and instead of standard, I'm going to make it that bean and have it match everything else with a 5 repeat. Let me come into that blue and change to a more appropriate white, and there would be my dollop of whipped cream, and I could place it wherever I would like it. That is going to stitch out last. We take a look at our pie once again, and here we see the finished block with our stippling and all of our applique. Just as a review, let's do the steps for stitching our embroidery. Here in this first picture, you see on the green fabric, the background fabric, I've already stitched out my custom stippling with the forks, laid down my applique piece that is for the pie itself. In the next picture, I've trimmed that, ready to come down to the next picture where I have laid my fabric down for the crust. Now again, this is not a traditional applique, so I do not have a placement line and tack down line, but that's okay because I know how big this piece needs to be to fit within that stippling. The last thing I do in this picture, you can see that I've trimmed the pie crust. I have stitched out the letters, and here is the applique fabric for that dollop of whipped cream. And once again, that is your finished block. Let's take a look at our third block. It is similar. Here we see an applique turkey. Once again, back into PEP, clean screen. We're going to come over to bubble text once again using my word art and stitches, go into the ellipse, Go back into Holiday, Thanksgiving. Here's our turkey. We'll leave the size. The artwork is fine. I'm going to remove the text, OK it, bring it to screen. We are going to come back into our show hoop. I always like to do this. This gives me the area defined that I have to play within. So now let's go in and size our turkey. He's a little big. Come over to our artwork, transform. I'm going to make him about 7.5 in height. And you can decide how large or how small you want your turkey in that particular block. Here's our bird. I'm going to add the additional lines that we want. Here's our outline. Let me add some colors to our thread bar here. I know I'm going to need them. Right click, come to Utility, and ask it to create outline. This time we're going to go inside, leave that 0.08, and I'm going to ask for 5 of them. I have the 5, the inside, and the 0.08. We'll do an OK. They have brought those additional outlines inside. I'm going to turn those to red just so we can see the difference here. I'll come over to All Items, right-click, Convert to Run. I'm going to set all of them to be a bean and apply it. The red will be the default 3 repeat, but I am going to go into the blue and make that repeat 5. Remember that this is a raw edge applique. I want it to match my other blocks. Coming over here to Realistic, we see what that looks like. With my blue turkey selected, I can come up here to Fabric, go into my ellipse, and make him orange to match my others. Let me change the colors of those lines on the inside so that we can see them better. And that's what our little guy is going to look like. Once again, your fabric choice might be different, your thread color choice might be different, but that helps us see what this turkey will look like. Let's add the words. We'll come up here to Text. I'll click on Screen. Rounded small is what we used for our pie, so that is what is showing here. I'm going to type the capital letter G for Give Thanks. Click on my font window. The font I want is Commercial Script, so I'll scroll up towards the top in alphabetical order. Here it is right here. I'll double click that. And I know that I want the height of that to be a 1.9. So I'll go ahead and apply that. I can see by changing the size, I do not want that split satin. Do you see right in this area how it's going to split the satin because that satin is too wide? We'll come back into our fill. I'm going to choose corn and also drop the density down to a 0.3 and hit apply. I'll change the color of that to a gold, and I like the look of that letter a lot. Let me select it and drag it and drop it on our bird. There's the G. I know that I want the capital T for thanks to look exactly like that, so all we need to do is do a copy and a paste. I'll drag that down to where the word thanks is going to be. Come over to my text box, type in the capital T and apply, and that's the easiest way to get those 2 capital letters to look the same. I now need the rest of the words themselves, so I will click on a text box on screen. I know that I want the IVE in lowercase, so I'll type that in. The script that I want for that happens to be cursive, so I'll scroll down, ask for that, and apply, and I will select it and drag my letters in just a little bit. I'm going to change the color so you can see it better here on our screen. But with this being cursive, I have a little bit of opening in those letters themselves. So selecting it again, the trick to a cursive is to come into space, and instead of putting in a positive number, I'm going to put in a -2 and apply. And what that does is it brings those letters closer together just a little bit so that it looks like it's all one word written. I'll check my density. I'm going to drop that down to apply, and then I think I'm going to size those just a little bit. Sometimes I like to size visually by using the handles so I can see what size I would like those letters to be. At this point, we'll go ahead and change it to gold, and I'm going to do that copy paste trick, drag the rest of that here, come over to my text box and type in the rest of the word thanks, H-A-N-K-S, apply it, and then play with the position. Actually, that looks pretty good. I like what I have there. I might do a file save as at this point, type in turkey, go ahead and save it, and now we're ready for our custom stipple. With this particular block, we don't have as much white space around our turkey, so our stippling probably is not going to be as full as it was in the first two blocks. A little different this time. We'll come up here to Symbol, do Select, scroll down in alphabetical order until we find Solid Heart. I'll click on that, OK it, and with Symbol, all I have to do is click once and the design will come on screen. I'll select it. I don't want it to be a solid fill, so I'm going to right-click, Convert to Artwork. The other thing about this is if I zoom in, you will see that this heart has little bitty extra pieces in it, so we're going to get rid of those before we move on. I will select it, expand the heart so that I can get to those pieces of the design. There's the big heart. I see that it's all grouped. Let me come up here to ungroup, and now I can go into those individual little pieces and hit delete on my keyboard. That's the big heart. I want that little guy, and then that artwork I'll just go ahead and group. Zooming back out, I now have the heart the way I'd like it, maybe just a little bit bigger. And I'll drag it over here to the top corner, maybe just a little bit bigger, since we aren't going to have as many of them. With it selected, we know our trick is to come up here to our Carousel drop-down, use Scatter. I'll leave it at the 8-inch hoop. I am going to set the minimum of 100. I know I don't want them any smaller than that, but I will set this at 175, and I'll go ahead and put my minimum distance at 0.8. I'll apply it and see what I have. That looks like a good gathering of my hearts. I'll go ahead and OK. In this case, I'm just going to leave these hearts to the side since the turkey takes up so much room, but I do need to ungroup them, and then I may position them where I'd like them to be. And I'm simply going to click and drag and position wherever these hearts might look fun. And certainly I could rotate if I needed to. Again, I could drag that. I'll take another small one here over in that corner, and maybe another small one to position here, and a larger one. He's kind of big, so I might, let me rotate him just a little bit, but I am going to size him just a little bit so he fits in there. And whether or not I have one or two rotate, I might decide that that's too crowded, or I could size them down just a little bit. We don't have as much space in our turkey area, so I'm using less of the artwork. I'll delete the ones I don't want. You may remember that with our custom stipple, we need to put this in the order we'd like them to stitch. So I will select that heart, come up here and ask it to move to front, and then choose these three in the order that I'd like them to stitch. Come down to these two. Again, send them to the bottom. So the order is as I'd like it to be, and at this point all I need to do is go in and connect those hearts with our artwork pen. This guy is just going to float up in the corner. So I will zoom in just a bit here for these hearts. I'll come up to get my artwork pen. I'm going to choose this color but make it a little darker for us to see. Right click it, and then I will connect all three of these hearts. I'll come up here with a little loop-de-loop, come down to select my heart, right click, come off of this heart, and maybe another loop-de-loop. Since I don't have very much stipple going on, I'd want to make these connections as cute as I could. I'll come down. I've chosen not to connect those upper hearts with my lower one. I'll right click and a loop-de-loop for this heart. And I could come in here and fill up the space as I'd like. A right click there. I would like to connect this heart. Down here, we'll right click. I'll click here and maybe another fun little circle in this position, or a right click to end. Now remember, I don't have to stress because I can come back and alter those points like we did with our pie. We'll zoom out, take a look and see if we like that. That looks good. I could move this heart as I saw fit, and then knowing that I'm going to alter the points on that, I can, once I have it done, if I've decided I like a little bit of alteration here, I can go in and do that. So we'll go ahead and zoom close to our artwork lines. Remember, I am going to make sure that my lines are touching my hearts. So in this case, that one looks good, this one looks good. I might even drag that over just a little bit. Okay, happy with that circle, or I will be. This line, you see that once you've done this a couple times now, you can get a little bit more confident on your circles, the little loop-de-loops that you're placing. I'll scoot down here, making sure that my lines touch. Scoot over to make sure. Selecting these, I like the look of that. This guy needs to come in just a little bit more. And if I want to make that circle even bigger, everything looks nice. Let's scoot over to this guy. Remember, I moved this heart, so we do need to alter this line. I'll put that right at the point. This looks good here. Scoot over, and then I had altered this heart as well. And I'll put him here. Remember, we said we do not have to worry if this didn't come out looking the way I thought it was. I can make that loop-de-loop. I can add another point so it comes down here and smooth this out. Maybe curl it over there again. I don't have to worry about that, knowing full well that I can alter my points once I get there. We'll zoom out, take a look with my select key. We know that everything is connected now. They are in the proper order. If I collapse both pieces, my stipple and my hearts, I'm going to select my hearts, hold down the control key and do my stipple. Come up here to my combine. They are in red. Let me put them in blue so you can see them a little better. We'll come over to our shape tool. We know that we want to smooth out those points. Choosing my zoom to get me a little closer so that I can use my shape tool and select those points. Lucked out there, got all of them. Do a right click and smooth. That's fun. I like the look of that. We'll scoot down a little bit. I'll smooth out these points. I'll click and drag around those points. I might even hold down the control key and pick up those other ones. Right click, smooth. That's fun. Again, come over to this area, right click. Smooth those out. Smooth this guy out. Come over here. Remember, this is where we added in the loop-de-loop, so we'll see if we like the look of it. Let me capture those a little better. Right click, smooth. And if I want to alter that at all, I can do so. This looks fun, but maybe bring it up just a little bit from the bottom of the hoop so it's not so far down. I might even delete that point to see what I'm given. I think I like that better. And once again, we'll zoom out, select, and I look at all of my stipple. I think this hoop right here is a little large. Do you see where it overpowers the heart? So let's go in there and fix that just a little bit, make that smaller. Very easy to do. I simply bring in the points. It's a little oblong. All I have to do is select them, right click and smooth those out again, and they're going to give me a better looking shape to that little loop-de-loop. And again, perfect. The ability to have all of these tools at our disposal so we can get just the look we want. Final thing we need to do is to select all of that stippling, right click, convert it to a run, and once again, there you have your turkey with its stipple. Finally, we're going to come over to our sequence view. We know that we like the stipple to stitch out first, so I'll go ahead and put that in that first position. It's then going to do my applique and then the inside outlines, and followed by the text itself. So that is exactly the way I'd like it to stitch out. Our slow redraw, I simply drag around, and that's exactly how I want this design to stitch out. So we are finished. I'll do my file save as. I add that word app at the end for applique, knowing that it's that type of project. I would go back in and save it again in my machine format. Before we go on, I'd like to show you another example of custom stippling. I will open this design that I already have done. It's very similar to our turkey, but instead of hearts, I used the states that you'll also find in Word Art in Stitches. And again, I would encourage you, if you are lucky enough to have multiple packages of inspiration software, that you use them within PEP. Again, you have access to any of those software that you have installed and registered. With our states here as our stippling, I have chosen the states where my family lives, which makes it even more personal for me as I am giving thanks. Maryland is a little difficult to spot, but it's right here. However, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Texas are very easy to identify. Let's go into our stitching process. Here's our block, the way it looks once it is stitched. But if we want a little bit of review, this one is very easy to stitch out, as once the stippling is finished, which you would see under this orange piece of fabric, you simply lay your prepared piece of applique fabric and stitch out the rest. No need to trim until it's all complete. We have used the pie, the fork, and the turkey artwork from Word Art in Stitches. If you don't have that software, no worries. You can go to one of the sites offering royalty-free images that are in the public domain. Here you see that I have suggestions for you as to where to go get that art. With this turkey, you could even use the snipping tool that we set up in part 1. You see it still down here pinned to my taskbar. At this point, you'll decide whether your 3 blocks become a table runner or a wall hanging. What determines that is the positioning of the blocks. If they all face the same way, to me it's a wall hanging, whether you do a vertical wall hanging or a horizontal one. For a table runner, you would want the first and third blocks rotated so that the bottoms of the blocks are at the ends of the runner. The middle block would be rotated so that the sides of the block are at the top of the other 2 blocks, as you see here. Now this is a suggested placement. Certainly this is your project. You place them the way you would like. I cut my blocks as 10 inches, or trimmed away about 1 inch from the outermost point of the stippling. My sashing was cut at 2 inches wide, sewn with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, which finishes at 1 inch. The aqua flange was cut at 1 1/2. The flange was basted to the edges before the binding was pinned on. Here you can see that I just overlapped my corners. The binding was cut at 2 1/4. You certainly could finish the blocks as you wish. They would also make darling mini pillows for your sofa. Whatever you decide, you'll have plenty of time to have your project ready for November decorating. Let us once again give thanks, certainly for the major blessings in our lives, but we shouldn't forget the little things either. Thank you for Perfect Embroidery Pro that lets us express ourselves in such creative ways. Thanks, too, for being with me again with this Part 2 Give Thanks video. Enjoy!